In the last episode of The Enchanted Duke, the St. Clare brothers had recently returned to London for the new season to finalize the restoration of Blackhaven Hall's East Wing, which had been damaged in a tragic fire 18 months prior. A horrific fire that took the lives of their mother, Eleanor, the Dowager Duchess, as well as Gabriel St. Clare's beloved wife, Elizabeth, Duchess of Blackhaven. In an effort toward healing, they had begun visiting several galleries and exhibitions to locate an artist who they felt would do justice to the Duchess and Dowager Duchess, in hopes it would help Gabriel's daughter, Amelia, who had withdrawn significantly since the loss of her mamma and grandmamma. The brothers last attended Vauxhall's opening night and perused the galleries in the pavilion, hoping to discover the right artist. There had been a painting set apart, with softer lighting, a woman in pale light, her eyes turned toward a storm, poised, serene, unknowably alive. The artist, E.G. Everley, a relatively new artist in London, had a technique and talent they both agreed would be perfect for the restoration. They discovered the artist worked unconventionally, but despite the risk of a declined commission offer and the non-traditional approach towards sittings, they agreed to move forward with the commission proposal. In another part of Mayfair stood Lady Evangeline Wintham, eldest daughter of the Duke and Duchess of Ashbury, shuffling through her sketchbook of recent works. At 23, Evie had trained for several summers in Italy and France and was an exceptionally talented artist. She signed any special or commissioned work anonymously under the pseudonym E.G. Everley. Unbeknownst to her and to Julian St. Clare, they'd met each other the previous week at an art exhibition, but without exchanging names or obtaining a formal introduction. Their chance meeting and their discussion over a William Turner stormy seascape lingered in both of their minds, with each of them finding it difficult to forget. We begin Episode 2 back at Blackhaven Hall after Gabriel and Julian had returned from Vauxhall. Episode 2 of The Enchanted Duke, The Commission. Chapter 5, Blackhaven Hall. The crowd and laughter of Vauxhall were thankfully at their backs. London's fog pressed softly against the windows now as a fire burned low in Blackhaven Hall in the late evening. The house breathed quiet grief as Gabriel sat beside Julian before the fire. He scraped his fingers through his hair in frustration. It's a strange thing losing your best friend. It feels as though Lizzie might step through that door again any moment. I sometimes wonder what is worse, feeling she'll be here any moment and suddenly recalling that she won't, or knowing she won't and feeling it every moment of the day and night. They didn't deserve this. Julian leaned forward.
It's a gut punch, and I can't fathom how you've been dealing with it. I love you, brother. I feel such pain and loss after losing our mother, but I'm also reeling over your and poor Amelia's loss every single day. I confess I feel helpless.
Gabriel harshly brushes newly formed tears from his eyes and sighs heavily. Thank you, brother. I believe your stay at Blackhaven is sure to alleviate both of our burdens and provide a great semblance of comfort. Gabriel moved to his desk, reading through correspondence. Julian stands near the hearth, still thoughtful. Gabriel picked up a set of papers. The commission form is straightforward enough. Names and particulars of the subjects, preferred attire and chosen events. The rest is unconventional, but we knew that.
You're sending it tonight?
At first light. The curator said Everley decides swiftly once he's observed each of the subjects in a couple of settings. It's probably best not to lose our place in line, presuming there is a line. Gabriel sealed the letter, the wax glinting red in the firelight. Julian remained by the mantel, staring into the flames.
It's odd, isn't it? That one could paint a person and personality without ever speaking to them.
If the artist captures her likeness, I'll be satisfied. It isn't for us, Julian. It's truly for Amelia. She deserves something to remember her mother by.
I know. I'm simply in wonder over the process and how Everley paints what people look like.
Gabriel studied him, an old, patient affection in his eyes. You've always looked for meaning where others find surface. Julian smiled.
And you've always guarded meaning as if it were currency.
Gabriel sat back, the first shadow of weariness crossing his face. We've both lost enough to warrant caution. If this Everley can bring even a fraction of comfort to my daughter, I'll overlook the eccentricities.
And if he cannot?
Then I'll send the painting back and start the process over. Julian moved toward the window, looking out at the fog.
Some things can't be returned, brother.
The fire snapped softly. Gabriel looked at him, something unspoken hovering between them. He picked up the sealed commission letter. This artist, eccentric though he may be, if he accepts the commission. Julian turned back and gazed into the fire, his reflection flickering in his glass of whiskey. He finishes Gabriel's sentence.
He will paint what the fire took.
Yes. The gallery at Vauxhall had several restorers, and I'm satisfied with using a team for our ancestors, but it was Everly's work that stopped me. I want him to do Lizzie's, Mother's, and ours. If anyone can bring back what was lost—
It's not just likeness you want restored,
Julian said softly. Correct. It's memory. Gabriel paused, and his hands clenched with quiet conviction. I have to believe he can. He looked down at the envelope on his desk. The wax bears the crest of Blackhaven. He sighs with a longing he cannot express. A few days later, Blackhaven Hall. Spacious, elegant, but weighed by grief. The mood is subdued. Curtains half drawn, a child's laughter once might have echoed here. Julian is with Gabriel and Gabriel's daughter Amelia, the solemn child who hasn't spoken but a handful of words since the fire. She was playing with her dolls near the tall windows. Firelight glowed against polished oak. Papers were spread across Gabriel's desk. Sketches, portfolios, and architectural renderings of the East Wing. Gabriel, Duke of Blackhaven, tall, composed, his mourning subdued by duty, moved beside his younger brother Julian, whose gaze drifted restlessly across the desktop. The house feels emptier each day now that the renovations are complete. He glances over at Amelia. She scarcely speaks. If the artist can restore even a shadow of what was lost, perhaps she'll find her way back to us. Julian looked over at Amelia, then back at the drawings.
Rebuild walls easily enough, Gabriel. It's memory that refuses to stay upright.
Have you seen the progress on the East Wing yet? Julian absently flipped through the pages.
No, not yet.
I confess, brother, nor have I. Julian glanced up at his brother in some surprise. I suppose I was waiting for you to arrive. I've just not been able to force myself to go down that hall again. Grandmama has seen it, and she seems pleased, so I'm not concerned as to whether I'll be satisfied. But I need to pay the workers, so I'll need to see it before opening the pocketbook.
Maybe we can do that tomorrow, brother.
Gabriel breathed in slowly, looked at his brother as if to gather strength, and nodded.
Speaking of Grandmama, where is she today?
She is at a charitable event, which is why we have Amelia tucked inside this library rather than leaving her with her governess in the nursery. She is getting somewhat steadier without us, but for now she wants to be close to family.
Understandable.
Gabriel looked down and traced the architecture diagram with his finger. He shook his head as if to clear the cobwebs of memories. Julian grasped him by the shoulder to convey his understanding of his brother's hesitancy to revisit the suites destroyed in the fire. The East Gallery alone held 15 portraits, 5 completely ruined, 3 beyond repair. He set the paper down, rubbing his temples.
The flames reached as far as the library?
Almost. The servants say a lamp overturned. A draught through the corridor caught the drapery. I was in Edinburgh that night. If I'd been home— Julian interjected.
You couldn't have stopped it. You have to stop blaming yourself.
Silence settled between them, heavy, but not unfamiliar. Gabriel looked over at Amelia, completely absorbed in her doll's play. She asks for them almost every night. I thought, perhaps if she could have the portraits done again as they were, she might begin to speak again. Julian moved closer and threw a comforting arm around Gabriel's shoulders. Gabriel let out a breath, embraced his brother, then turned and finally closed the folio. It seems we've a role reversal at the moment, brother, he smiled softly, looking at Julian with gratitude. Chapter 6, Evie's studio, 2 days later. Morning light through tall windows. Evie stood before an easel sorting sketches. A maid delivered a note. Evie, in her painting smock, froze halfway through cleaning a brush. From the gallery, my lady, the maid said respectfully. The note was set upon her table, a commission request bearing the gallery's crest. She opened the parchment slowly and read. It seems the study in stillness had generated interest that resulted in a large commission offer. Evie's breath caught. She took the note and crossed the room to a portfolio drawer where she removed a sketch, the very same composition.
I wasn't sure if I should have you displayed. Maybe I was wrong to not have you return to me.
Evie called toward the door.
Anna, I'll be sending a reply to Mr. Fenton momentarily.
She was contemplating calling the painting back, all the while knowing it was too late. Yes, my lady, I'll alert the footman. The maid bobbed a quick curtsy and left the room. She reread the note. Her fingers lingered on the name of the estate requesting the commission. Something inside her stirred, not dread, not recognition, but an uneasy pull, as though the air itself shifted, the Blackhaven Hall fire. Evie remembered reading about it, and recalled the graveness of Mama and Papa's demeanor in their discussion. The family tragedy she remembered now, the young daughter's subsequent illness. She hesitated, fingers resting on the parchment. Sunlight spilled through the tall windows, catching the faint shimmer of unfinished portraits along the wall. She looked at the parchment once again. The note read, "Your work, Study in Stillness, has been much admired. A private commission for 3 restorations and 4 new works is requested by the Duke of Blackhaven and his brother Julian St. Clare, the Duke of Eversley."
It was one of my earliest pieces, painted before I understood what my gift truly was. I had thought it harmless, an experiment in light and longing. But some paintings are not finished when the paint dries. They keep breathing, and I could not bear for strangers to feel what I had not meant them to.
She thought. Evie did not live in opposition to society so much as apart from its noise. The endless shoulds and should-nots of London life seemed to her a performance she was never meant to join. She did not seek to shock, nor did she crave notice, only peace. There was a serenity about her that unsettled the ambitious and drew the weary. Those who spoke with her often left with the curious sense that they had been truly heard, perhaps for the first time. In truth, Evie simply saw more clearly than most. Her world was not divided by rules, but by light, what revealed and what concealed. She began thinking about the past, about her painting The Siren she'd completed while in training at the studio in Florence. The commission had not been hers to accept. It was Maestro Vescari's, her painting master's, chosen model, a Venetian actress known for her beauty and her scandal. Her voice, they said, could quiet a room. Her lovers, they whispered, rarely left unchanged. The master wanted his students to try to capture the unspoken in her eyes. It was a difficult task and one that stretched Evie's skills at that time. Evie painted her as instructed, half in shadow, the suggestion of sea and sky behind her, a single strand of pearls glinting at her throat. She was captivating and alluring, and Evie was inspired to paint her as one of the sirens in Homer's Ulysses. She was almost finished with the painting, pleased with what she'd accomplished, when a merchant's son, a young naval officer and longtime family friend of the master's, came to call unexpectedly. The master introduced him to his newest season's students, and when he stopped to greet Evie, he could not look away from her painting. He barely noticed Evie at all. He returned the next day, and the next. Once Evie found him standing before the easel long after her lesson had ended, staring as though he had forgotten the world beyond that frame. When the master forbade his visits, he grew pale and restless. "She is calling me," he had murmured once, almost feverishly. He was unable to convince the master to sell him the portrait no matter how many times he gave an impassioned speech. The master was confused by his long-time friend's erratic behavior and his unusual desire for the painting. Before he'd been banned from the studio, he'd paused before her easel, his gaze fixed not on her work, but within it. "She looks as if she might breathe," he murmured, voice taut with something uneasy. "As if she might speak if I were close enough to listen." Evie thought he spoke in flattery, as men often did, and offered a polite smile. But his eyes, they were strange, hungry. When he reached toward the painting, she felt it before she understood it, a pull, like a thread between his pulse and her brushstrokes. The air itself grew tight, buzzing and pulsing with electricity. She returned to the atelier one morning to find the great window forced open, broken, and her canvas gone. She thought it must be some petty thief mistaking art for coin, but Maestro Vescari's expression told her otherwise. "He came again yesterday," he said grimly, "offered 10 times its worth. I told him it was not for sale, not yet, perhaps not ever. He left. Strange, as though the refusal had wounded him." Evie's pulse fluttered.
"You think he—"
"I think," Vescari said slowly, scratching his head, "that I have seen men ruin themselves for love, for drink, for pride, but never for a painting." The words lingered long after he left her. She stood before the empty easel, the faint imprint of her work still visible in the dust where it had rested. The silence around her seemed to float like dust in the light. For the first time she wondered what it was that truly lived upon her canvas, and what it might take from those who beheld it. The master said he'd learned the young sailor had left Florence after making inquiries with his family. He'd known the young man the whole of his life and could not make any rhyme or reason of it. His family indicated he'd been deeply troubled and depressed since he'd returned from his last journey, but they had no explanation otherwise. Only the mortification they felt to learn of his behavior toward their dear friend, Vescari. For several nights after the theft, Evie could not bring herself to lift a brush. Maestro Vescari, kind enough to leave her be, mistook it for shame or discouragement. It was neither. It was doubt. She had long painted under the name E.G. Everly, a small deception that allowed her to study the human figure, to paint grief, tenderness, longing, and all the raw things society pretended not to feel. In Italy and France, such work was admired. In London, it would have been ruinous for a woman to paint such subjects. The name had been her shield in London. But now she found herself staring at her latest portrait, a simple study of a lady and child, and she still felt that tremor of unease when finishing their eyes. She discovered her gift of healing through painting, and had great comfort in knowing how much she'd been able to help others, especially those in grief. But she always understood the risk of the peculiar response, such as the one from the sailor. She always wondered,
what if even this was not harmless?
It was back then she'd looked at her initials, written lightly in the corner of her paintings, and decided it suddenly seemed too loud. She decided it was safer if they never knew who painted them at all. She shivered as she recalled the look in the sailor's eyes. She'd signed the next painting as E.G. Everly, then another, and another. And as she did, a part of her began to fade quietly into shadow, not with shame, but with purpose. In the weeks that followed, Evie returned to her more proper pursuits, landscapes, botanicals, quiet domestic studies, the sort of work no one could question. Under her own name, Lady Evangeline Wintham, such pieces were even admired in certain circles. Her florals were praised for their delicacy, their ethereal light for their serenity. The special portraits, the ones that seemed to breathe when no one was looking, those she continued to sign as E.G. Everly. It was not vanity, nor even modesty, but self-preservation. She could not quite explain it, only that it felt right, as though her art itself wished for the veil. If her landscapes captured beauty as it was, her portraits revealed beauty as it was felt, and that, she had come to realize, could be dangerous. So she painted both worlds. By daylight, the soft brightness of lilies and morning skies. By candlelight, the private world of eyes that saw too much and mouths that almost spoke. One name for the living, another for the unseen. There was a time when Evie could no longer bring herself to paint the eyes. The rest came easily, the sweep of fabric, the light on skin, the soft gleam of jewelry. But when the brush hovered near the gaze, she faltered. The eyes were where truth lived, and her hand trembled at the thought of what truth might answer back. Once or twice she allowed another artist, a kind soul who admired her work, to finish the eyes under the pretense of fatigue or frustration.
It is only the smallest touch,
she had said.
It's in need of only a hint of reflection.
The eyes without her touch looked beautiful but different, safe. And that safety cost her something she could not name. Her mama took her in hand when she noticed the change in Evie. She saw she was a ghost of her usual self. She took her in hand as gently as possible and helped guide her so she was able to safely bridge the world that others would never understand. Since then, Evie has been balancing between both worlds, cautiously, tenuously, but able to be her true self since returning to the comfort of her family's embrace and benefiting from her mother's understanding and experience. However, deep inside, Evie understood the thin line between helping and harming, and she still had nightmares about the prospect.
Thank you for listening. We are so pleased for you to join us on our journey. Our story is a multiple-episode Regency-Romance novella, so please do subscribe for next week's episode. The writer thanks you in advance for your comments, notes, and suggestions as we hope to improve with each episode and with each story. Until next time, may your days be filled with kindness and love.